2, 3, 4 steps I take from my bed to the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8. Will today be rough or will today be great? 9, 10, 11, 12. Lately I've been going through hell. 13, 14, 15, 16. Today's the day. Are you coming? Are you sick of being normal? I'm sick of being average. I'm sick of being mortal. I'm about to be a savage. I see a lot of things that I want, I will have them. I got a new mindset that I just established. I'll march through the cold with the nails on the pavement. I'll shovel that coal just to get out the basement. My story will be told, helping others make changes. I'll be so bold, they will watch in amazement. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it. Am I gonna face it? Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start over? I keep waiting. Time is limited, quickly fading. Get my mind right, it's my time to take it.
Yo! How's it going? Yeah, I know. What did I do? Went through some kind of wood chipper. Today we're going to be doing 2 videos, possibly 3. Maybe we'll do some base camp, but our goal today is going to be some paganism and then some scholarism. Let's get to it. I'm sending out the links right now, so you're going to see me looking down. We're going to start off with Angela Symposium. Here we go.
One of the inspirations, I think, for modern paganisms, at least in the
to help provide some of the questions on each question that
contributors from other scholars. And yeah, Susan, can you start talking about how this book came to be?
Yes, so there is a series published by Equinox called Religion in 5 Minutes. So the very first volume was called Religion in 5 Minutes, which was edited by Russell McCutcheon and Aaron Hughes, bringing together typical questions that students might ask about religion and commissioning a whole bunch of different scholars to write very short essays that should not take more than 5 minutes to read on each question. And so each book in this series follows a similar format. And so I was asked to do one on paganism. And I brought in Angela Puka, and we made use of her Patreons to help provide some of the questions on Angela Symposium. And we also used a couple of email lists, the Pagan Studies one in the American Academy of Religion, and the European one connected to the European Association for the Study of Religions. And we got quite a lot of offers of people willing to contribute. So we wanted to have an international group because paganism is quite different in Europe and North America and different places. So we wanted to get a good breadth. And we got 1 or 2 scholars from other places too, like Australia, Brazil. That it was difficult to get any other sort of scholars from other parts of the world. We did get one to talk about different kinds of traditions that might be called paganism, like voodoo, and so can debate about whether or not it's appropriate to call that pagan, and various other kinds of questions like that. And we had hoped to have an event with students to ask questions, but the pandemic and lockdowns happened and kind of delayed us a bit. But in the end, we managed to get 70 questions. So that's a lot of questions. And
That's not so many.
some people answered just 1 question of the scholars that we contacted, and some answered up to 4 or 5. I think the most that someone has done is 5. And then it was just a matter of asking.
Yeah. Also, I was about to say the concept of pagan
Yes.
religion in 5 minutes is that it's based on a question and answer format. So every question is supposed to be answered within 5 minutes. So you're supposed to read it within 5 minutes, so that it's very like quick and immediate as a response that you get.
Yeah. I don't know. You can see a typical page. In fact, the one that opened happens to be Vivian's, which one of the panelists. And is that backwards?
No, I can see
No,
it.
it's okay. Yeah, yes. So it starts with a question that somebody might typically ask. And then there's also further readings at the end of each one. So usually, about just a few essential readings. Oops. that are at the end of each one. So each one is about 2.
How is everybody?
Great, thank you.
I'm doing well.
Very good, thank you.
So I would say maybe we can I can leave the floor to each of you to discuss about your contribution to the volume. And if you want, you can also say more about paganism more generally and why do you think a volume like this was necessary, and also any thoughts that you have about the state of pagan studies, I suppose. So Sabina, do you want to start?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me as part of this panel today and for inviting me to contribute to this volume. So my name is Sabina Magliocco. I'm a professor of anthropology and the chair of the interdisciplinary program in the study of religion at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. And
Okay, so Vancouver, Canada, as far as I know, that is a subset of England. So we are talking to the colonized. Let's see how it goes.
And my contributions are 2 chapters. One was on how did modern paganism begin? And the second one was on how much of paganism is based on cultural appropriation. Now,
The second question doesn't really matter. The first question I find very interesting.
it's a bit odd. The first contribution is a bit odd coming from an anthropologist, an ethnographer, somebody who studies folk tradition as I do, because it's the first question, how did paganism begin? How did modern paganism begin? Is really more of a historical question. But we can
I mean, how did modern paganism begin? That's going to be Crowley, and that's going to be Granger, and that's going to be, I'm sorry, Gardner, and there's one other person whose name I can't remember, and it's going to be LaVey. I mean, that's really where it's going to be kind of in the LSD and anti-cultural, countercultural movements that were counterculture to the counterculture.
cannot understand modern pagan religions unless we understand how they developed as part of a historical.
No, what is she talking about? Modern, though? Does she mean modern as in like what's currently around, or does she talking about maybe post Wiccanism in this kind of neo-pagan atmosphere that they find themselves in, or does she mean modern, like maybe like in the 18th century modern? What's modern to her? She needs to define that first.
Process. And so in that chapter, I emphasize the nature of modern paganisms as new religious movements, as movements that really were
Canada, the 52nd state of the United States.
built on already existing roots in Western culture, but that developed out of a particular set of historical circumstances in the early 1800s as part of the Romantic movement. And that's really how most historians who study these religions today, from an academic perspective, see them. So I kind of trace the development of modern paganisms as part of the Romantic movement and also as part of colonialism, because colonialism gave birth to the disciplines of anthropology and folklore studies, without which I think modern paganisms would look quite different. Because one of the inspirations, I think, for modern paganisms, at least in the early 1800s, but I think continuing forward, was this colonial discovery, and I put it in quotes because indigenous people didn't need to be discovered, and traditional peoples living in colonial countries also didn't need to be discovered. But there was this kind of discovery of their traditions, of their practices in the early 1800s.
Yes, they did need to be discovered, because then you wouldn't know about them. That's just so stupid.
That both objectified them but also romanticized them as part of the Romantic movement. And I think without that academic perspective, the way that modern pagan religions see ancient pagan religions would have looked quite different. So that's what that chapter is about. And then the second chapter, I think, is
Canada is America's hat. I think that's insulting to hats. Canada is America's dandruff.
is a bit more anthropological. It's a bit more in my wheelhouse. It's how much of paganism is based on cultural appropriation. And this is a question that I get asked a lot, even in my classes, when I teach classes on New Age and neo-pagan religions, on new religious movements more broadly, or even in my very popular large undergraduate lecture class, The Anthropology of the Supernatural. I get asked that a lot. Aren't all modern pagan religions based on cultural appropriation? And this is a complex question to answer, because the first thing that we need to understand is that all religions emerge out of a particular cultural matrix from which they take elements. Religions aren't born from nothing. Christianity, for example, emerged first as a sect of Judaism, and it incorporated not only many elements from Judaism during the Roman Empire, but also many elements of other late antique cults that existed in that milieu, in that first globalizing milieu of the global Mediterranean in the period of late antiquity. Elements, for example, from the cult of Isis, from the cult of Mithras, from the cult of the
That's all incorrect.
Matres, which was very popular
Nope,
among
that is wrong. Most of those cults that we know about come after Christianity. The cult of Isis, though, is very ancient and it keeps on recycling and coming back over and over again. But what there was of the Isis cult has nothing to do with Christianity. Later versions of the Isis cult would incorporate some Christian ideas, but the Isis cult in itself is a rejection of Christianity and is usually intellectuals and occultists or esoteric types trying to connect to the ancient mother goddess. So, the cult of Isis is very unique. It has nothing to do with Christianity and did not influence Christianity at all. And like I said, the other two that she mentioned spring out of Christianity as a rejection of Christianity. So this is not a good example.
Roman legionnaires, Roman soldiers. And these elements were incorporated
She believes nonsense and stuff that comes from bad documentaries.
into early Christianity. Was that cultural appropriation? No, that's simply the way that religions emerge and influence one another. And if you look at other instances of new religious movements, if you look, for example, at the Church of the Latter-day Saints, which
I think she had a realization that this lady's full of shit because she made a face.
emerged in the 1800s in the United States. If you look at the Spiritualist Church, also emerging during that period, the Second Great Awakening in the mid-1800s in the United States, both of these religious movements incorporated
I feel like I've read one of her books. Have I read something from her? Because everything she's saying sounds familiar, just something that I read that I thought was complete crap.
many elements from the surrounding cultural matrix. And modern paganisms are no different, and I don't think that that constitutes cultural appropriation. At the same practices that are then sold or promulgated, then charging attendees $500 profit motive there. But it emerges out of a capitalistic context. No capitalism, no notion of intellectual property, cultural appropriation as a concept can't really exist in what is now called British Columbia.
Lovely book. Because when I was
Societies. So, for example, I'm speaking to you here.
Okay, I'm hoping this lady has a lot more to add.
From the traditional ancestral unceded territory of the Hunkaminam-speaking Musqueam people in what is now called British Columbia. And among the Musqueam, certain narratives belong to certain clans and moieties. Only people from those particular families can tell those narratives. So the idea that there's no concept that culture belongs to a specific group in a pre-capitalist time is also, it's not entirely correct. It's not entirely correct. But yes, cultural appropriation is a construct that is part of the colonial critique and that is part of an environment in which we currently live, the environment of late capitalism in which culture has been commodified.
Thank you, Sabina. And thank you, Vocatus, for the super chat. So, Vivian, now the floor to you. Do you mind talking about your contribution?
Sure, I'll do that. But first of all, I wanted to sort of thank Sabina for such brilliant explanations of some of the terms that are bandied around in this area. So thank you for that. And
Trying to get my nose
it's provoked
twitched.
a lot of thought in me. And I think that's what my reaction was when I got my copy of this lovely book. because I really, when I was asked to contribute to it, I had no idea how the book would be, and I was very excited and a little bit nervous when I got my copy, thinking, "Wow, what have the other contributors said? Do I agree with it? What do I think it's good? What is my reaction to it?" And I got totally absorbed in the book. And I did kind of what Suzanne did at the beginning. I opened the book at a section and I just started reading Is Carnival a Pagan Festival? And then I thought, oh, what's next? What can I find now? Oh, what's the difference between hard and soft polytheism? And so I was kind of dipping in and dipping out. And I was finding really fascinating new information, or not just new things, but also very neat and articulate and concise ways of explaining the sort of questions that you've had come up in your Patreon streaming, Angela, but also the sort of questions we see asked on Facebook groups or on other internet fora about paganism. So I enjoyed being a reader. So first of all, I was university chaplains who are getting students coming to them wanting to talk about paganism, who also have to talk to other chaplains from other faith traditions about paganism, and who've said, this is just brilliant to give to somebody and say, dip in and out of it. The questions that you would like to ask will be in here, and I can talk to you more about those questions if you want to know more. So that was my...
I'll be right back. I heard a door open. I got to make sure he's okay. I'll be back. Sorry, guys. I know you guys are just hopping in. Alexa, turn off garage. What? Ah, no, what the hell? All right, we're back.
My professional chaplain colleagues, and then scholars were saying, yes, I'm going to order this from my university library. so that's great too. And then I gave it to practitioners who...
I actually want to order both of Angela's books because I rarely get actual scholarly... again, I don't know if they're actually scholarly. I'm thinking they are based on what they're saying, where they're saying they went to school. Anybody can say anything. Who knows? But I want to buy both of her books because I've said a lot about paganism and witchcraft and all this stuff. It'd be interesting to see what, from a scholarly level, how much of what I've read from like Barnes and Noble is actually what actual paganism, modern neo-paganism actually believes.
Like, oh, pagan religions in 5 minutes, is that like serious? And I said, yes, it's an academic publisher. This is really serious stuff. It's very well researched. And people were just becoming absorbed, doing exactly what I did. They were looking at this chapter and that chapter and that chapter and saying things. Mindfulness gift window here, Suzanne and Angela. But it was really fascinating to see the response from people who are practitioners purely, people who are academics, and people who work in professional ministry to this book. And it was all really positive. And I, as a reader, was really positive about it. So I can recommend it from having read it. But I think something that's perhaps important to say about all of this is that this book's been written in a particular cultural and societal context in which most of us are living in very globalized, multicultural, multi-religious societies where...
I have this fast forward and this is going this slow. Wowzers.
One religious truth, only one spiritual path that is valid. It's just impossible to hold. So we're living in a background where there are competing worldviews, different ideas about spirituality and religion. And I think for many people, that space is one where turning to something that's much more rooted in nature.
I am going to do it. I think I'm going to do 1.5.
Doesn't maybe have so much baggage about orthodoxy of predetermining what your beliefs should be, or orthopraxy, predetermining how one should practice a spiritual path, is very attractive. So my first contribution to the book was on the question of, as Suzanne said, of how many pagans are there. And I give some data that's available from surveys and censuses. But I also, and I sort of map a little bit of the growth of paganism in some countries. But I also say it's increasingly difficult to pinpoint who is a pagan and who isn't a pagan, because many people now do what I call pagan stuff. So they will celebrate a seasonal festival. They'll go along to a sacred site where maybe there's a gathering that has some kind of ceremony. When they get married, they might decide they want their marriage to be a pagan hand fasting rather than something from one of the world religious traditions, but they may not label themselves pagan. They may say, I'm spiritual but not religious. So paganism is increasingly present in Western societies in what people do, but not necessarily how people label themselves. And I think this is the background in which all these wonderful and rich questions about paganism are being asked. So I think that's about all I want to say, really, other than it's been a joy to write these.
So, on one hand, not as much nonsense as came from Dr. Sabina, but without having read the book, I don't know how much contribution she actually gave to the topic at hand.
Lovely little concise pieces on paganism, and I hope the book gets very widely distributed because it's really, really useful and really great.
I mean, it's on Amazon. Go buy it if you want to learn more about paganism from actual professors and not just what you're going to find from I keep on saying Gardner. What you're going to find from Barnes & Noble and from maybe your local occult shop. This might be a good choice. I'm surprised that, I'm going to call her the cute witch, even though I know that's not her real name. I'm surprised that she's not part of this project. I'm wondering if she only has a master's or a bachelor's. But she's been doing a lot of research, and she manages the Museum of Witchcraft or the Museum of Witches, Museum of Magic, and yeah, I think it has to do with Salem.
Thank you. I was also thinking, do you think that the fact that there's more pagan doing than pagan identities, do you think that it says something about the nature of paganism itself?
No, I think it says something about it can do, but principally it says something about the nature of society now and people's attitudes towards religion. So it's not necessarily about paganism, but it's the way paganism is developing.
And this might, I know this sounds like way too heady, but it might change post-Trump. So I do think that there's a cultural change happening that's rejecting this kind of soft counterculture that happened for the last 10 years, 15 years. It does feel like there's a movement away from that counterculture into a new counterculture, which is more conservative, which conservatives have never been cool. So this is kind of an interesting time.
Reflects the whole societal context in which we're living and moving. And if you look at things like pagan practice in some of the Northern European countries where there are only minority people identify as having a religion. So most people say they don't have a religion, but magic is flourishing, shamanism is flourishing, mindfulness is flourishing. So spiritual practices from around the world are finding their homes in these countries.
Yeah, but to call spiritualism and meditation and let's say Christian major religions like Hinduism or Buddhism, to put those into the pagan category, the way that paganism is being defined here, which again, we still haven't heard a definition of paganism or a definition of any of these things that they're talking about what modernity is. Like none of this stuff has been defined. They're just using these words. I'm guessing here that Hinduism and Buddhism don't fit into this definition of paganism, and this definition of paganism is more European based, possibly Mediterranean based, although I'm guessing it's going to be more like British, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of ancient magic in ancient Greece that was rejected by So, for those that don't know, in these ancient pagan cultures, the actual ones, they hated magic and they hated witchcraft and they burned witches in these ancient cultures. So witches were not a good thing in the ancient pagan world. However, the way that we've come to define paganism in modern times is that now the witches are the pagans. So the people who used to be persecuted by these dominant religions are now the ones who are carrying the flame of these ancient religions. So that's ironic and interesting. I'm not hearing that conversation here. So again, I don't know I don't know how scholarly these particular doctors are. I don't know what their degrees really are. I know I've talked about this lady beforehand, and I don't have a lot of material, except I think that she's from Trent. Is that right? Or some Kent? I don't know. Some European college.
And people are in a very personal and eclectic way combining the things that work for them. Because I think the other very important thing about paganism is
And again, you got Dr. Crowley. Like, it's just, to me, there's too much chance that it's not real, that these are not real scholars. I hope they are real scholars, because I desperately do want to see some real scholarship in this department.
paganism today is its emphasis on finding spiritual truth within oneself. So not so much depending on external resources or external authorities, but rooting oneself in one's own intuition and personal experience and trusting in that. And in a society where the trust networks are breaking down, there's little trust in politicians or anyone in authority, then the idea of individualized spiritual practice based
I'm going to say this. Between the two people we've heard speak so far, I really like what Dr. Vivian is saying most, but I'm still not seeing a lot of red meat here.
one's own spiritual truth is becoming increasingly popular and will continue to grow, I think.
Thank you.
And if I can add an observation, Vivian, to your absolutely brilliant and accurate portrayal, this is one of the things that makes cultural appropriation easy, that we live in an environment in which bits and pieces of different...
Can you tell us something about your
Please.
contribution and anything you want to share?
Sure. So I contributed 2 pieces to the book, and just to echo what others have said, I think it's a really great book for teaching. For especially for classes where people have different, maybe no knowledge of paganism or pagan studies, and others who have some knowledge. So it's quite a broad book with lots of different questions and answers. One of the things I think is difficult in answering any question about paganism is to try and get the diversity of paganism across in the answer. So one of the questions I answered was, how do pagans communicate with deities? And
I would just like to hear the answer of what is paganism. Let's start there. Start at the basics. Start at the bottom.
spirits, and
Have some framing.
the answer depends on how people define what a deity or spirit is. So for some pagans,
Okay, what is God? What is a deity? That's a good question.
deities and spirits are literally existing beings who have endured through time and can be communicated with in different ways. And for others, they are archetypes. So there's more of a psychological approach. The deities, for example, representing cosmic forces or nature. And for some people, there might be a combination of different understandings of what deities are. And then spirits might be understood as something else. So that was something to try to think about. So what I focused on in my answer was, ritual, because I think for most pagans, ritual is an important communicative method, usually by casting a circle and calling the quarters and these kinds of ritual actions, creating a magical space in which that communication happens. And then also...
So are we talking about neo-paganism? Are we talking about actual paganism, like ancient paganism, like paganism before Christianity and Judaism became dominant religions? What are we talking about here? I'm still not getting a good feel for what it is that they're actually talking about.
Also things like dreams and visions and different things that are tied to embodiment. So being in a body and how that, what that has to do with different realms, different beings and communication. So the other piece that I wrote was the answer to the question are Halloween and Easter pagan festivals. So I tried to get across the answer yes and no, and so overtly the answer is no, that these are they're Christian festivals. So
Okay,
Easter
they're honest.
is
They're
a
honest. We hear
Christian,
some honesty. That's good.
calendar time, so this is
Hey, Lisa.
the pagan aspect would be the popular practices and where they come from. So like Sabina, I'm also a
You skipped out. You missed me doing all my funny faces.
folklorist who is a scholar of religion. So I'm very interested in that mixing together of cultural traditions. And, there are things like the spring equinox, influences that have likely come from pre-Christian and traditional cultures in different parts of the world to do with springtime, like all of those symbols we find around Easter, like chicks and eggs. Easter eggs. You know, eggs are a symbol of new life and fertility, and bunnies. So these are not part of Christian doctrine or, you know, the official observances, but they are very much part of the popular or folk traditions. So I'm also interested in what we've been talking about in connection with.
So far these two, I'm really liking these two. What they're contributing to this, I guess, advertisement for 5-Minute Paganism, which they're calling it an academic book, but I don't know. The title 5-Minute Paganism makes it feel like it's more poppy.
Cultural
They're
appropriation.
going to start doing heavy metal in a few minutes.
And we know that things like decorating eggs and the significance of eggs are also found in older religious practices and cultures, like the Persian Nowruz, for example, the Persian New Year. So I would add that I think, you know, when people talk about culture.
So again, I still want to hear what they're talking about, what they're defining as paganism. I haven't heard them talk about that, and I still haven't heard them really explain what a deity is in their point of view. They just gave two broad examples, like that are in opposite spectrums of each other.
Cultural appropriation, they're often talking about where there is some reference or use of cultural material that is in some way disrespectful, or where there's a power dynamic, as Sabina mentioned earlier, you know, this critique of colonization and where there's a minority or an indigenous culture.
I don't really care about the colonization or the cultural appropriation shit. That really annoys me and bores me. Let's move forward a minute.
Both of those days have a very complex history, where those dates changed and were, you know, different times in different parts of Europe and in, you know, in the Middle East as well. There were different times to observe both All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, and they didn't become standardized until much later in time. But I was looking at the connection, or the very likely connection between those dates and.
I know that the big hitters, you know, Kip and Bowman and Dan, and I mean, we're going to say Vishanti, even though she's not really. I don't think she's a big hitter. I don't think she does other stuff. Although maybe she does. Maybe she has like a huge channel. The Myth Vision dude, Dr. Oh my crap! I lost his name. Crap! Oh no! I forgot his name. Bart Ehrman. There we go. I would love for Bart Ehrman to interview Angela Polka and see if she really is a real scholar, and see what her scholarship says on paganism, and just take a break of talking about from Christianity for a little bit.
The festival of Samhain, not just because I researched the Irish context, but because, you know, Samhain is a Irish and Celtic festival found in other parts of the Celtic Europe. So which in our calendar here in Ireland is still celebrated on the 1st of November as Samhain. So Samhain is also the name for.
I like her a lot. I like this lady. I like this lady a lot so far.
The month of November in Irish. So this. You know, again, it's emerging together of different cultural elements and kind of layers of meaning on the traditions that's happened over a very long time. So people can make different claims on festivals and rituals. So it gets complicated with identities, and if people feel that their culture is somehow being threatened or dismissed, or you know, sometimes there can be emotions around that for different reasons. But that they're my pieces. So.
Thank you, Jenny. And Giovanna, now it's your turn. And there's somebody here talking about the fact that they're reading your book, your new book, The Spiral Dance, which I'm hoping to get you on to talk specifically about that one.
I would. I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Cute cat, Sabina.
So hello Angela Symposiasts. My name is Giovanna Parmigiani and I'm new to this channel. So I will briefly introduce myself. I am an anthropologist and a lecturer at Harvard Divinity School and a research associate at the Center for the Study of World Religions at Harvard University. And I am the co-chair of the contemporary.
As far as we know, that's not even a real school. We've seen that Christian scholars have said they've gone to Harvard, meaning they went to the street of Harvard. that I'm not actually accusing her of that. I just think it's funny that There's Christian apologists who went to Harvard, meaning they were on the street or in the library of Harvard or Yale or whatever. Let me move my thing so you can see her. There we go.
Pagan Studies Unit at the American Academy of Religion. So I'm very happy to be here talking about things pagans with you. But before moving to my contribution, I would like to thank Angela.
Derek
for
Lambert.
first imagining.
Chris Lambert, the Highlander.
And then realizing this wonderful book in the way you did, I found the contributions to be so nuanced, but at the same time so extraordinarily accessible. And I'm saying this not only as a scholar of paganism, but I also identify as a pagan. So paganism is my spirituality, and if you want to know more about when and how I decided to take on this identity, I'm happy to tell you more. But I found this book really not only a Christmas present, but really something I would suggest to my students, to people who are curious about why I do what I do and why I practice what I practice. So thank you very much for being able to put this together.
Thank you for being one of the contributors.
This is my contribution. You can see that. Well, it's is paganism empowering for women and LGBTQI+. So
there's a book on my TBR called Satanism and Feminism, or Luciferian Feminism. So this is not new. It's not new information for me. It's not a new idea. I'm talking about her. I'm not talking about the other ones. So let's see where she goes.
The short answer is yes. In general, the vast majority of self-defined pagan religions, spiritualities, or individuals are inclusive, or tend to be more inclusive than the context in which they operate towards LGBTQI+ rights and experiences.
Yeah, well, that'd be modern. So this is modern paganism. We're not talking about ancient paganism, unless she's ahistorical, but we'll see.
I'm kind of cautious. I'm talking about paganism as, as a totality, because as you'll learn from reading this book, paganism is really an umbrella term to talk about many things. And I'd rather...
Yeah, and it's a very broad umbrella. That's why I want you guys to define it a little bit better, just so I can know how legit any of this is. As someone who's familiar with the topic on a more pop culture level.
Or the metaphor of the tent, to think about paganism. We can discuss this maybe later. And I bring in three bodies of scholarship to support my claims. First, I refer to pagan theology, so the importance of the goddess in many pagan spiritualities and religions.
That's not all paganism. Not all paganism is feminist. In fact, ancient paganism would be very patriarchal.
Secondly, I bring in all the connection between feminism and the onset of, the spread of pagan spiritualities, both in the UK and in the US.
So this is modern, postmodern paganism as a response to the failures of first wave and second wave feminism, as it relates to rejecting patriarchy and Christianity, where Christianity and God represent the patriarchy in patriarchal forms, not the other way around, where patriarchal forms are expressions of the Godhead, but the Godhead himself is representing the patriarchy. Okay.
And thirdly, I bring in recent scholarship on the lived religion aspects of paganism. All of us here in different ways, I think about Jenny and Sabine and Suzanne, Angela, but also Vivian, have been working, with people on the ethnographic aspect and claiming the importance of, paying attention to lived religions, even the most sore for religions such as paganism that have a strong practical component. As Vivian said, not all, define themselves as pagan, although do things kind of pagan. But if we think about practices, well, ethnography is the...
So again, these two are still my favorite. While she is covering an aspect of modern and postmodern feminist paganism, she sounds a little biased and sounds like she's a little bit out of her depth, possibly in ancient paganism and ancient practices. So she might be more interested in neo-pagan practices and its rejection of patriarchal ness.
Thing to do if we want to know more about it. Of course, there are exceptions to this general openness towards, queerness and LGBTQI+ experiences. And notably, I would...
She might be a deconstructionist. I used to be a deconstructionist. Relativist, maybe? Okay, relativist. Good point. Yeah. Anything else you want to add? Okay.
I would mention some conservative Dianic witches and an episode between 2011 2012 and the Pantheacon that was trans exclusive. But
2011, 2012. Yeah, so this is really postmodern paganism. This really isn't ancient paganism at all.
created lots of conversation rifts within the community, but also
Neo-paganism.
also about inclusivity. And I know, Sabina, that you know more about this and a lot about this because you were also, geographically close to the area.
I was there. I was there.
There you go. So you can tell us if you want some insights from being there. And that's about it. I mean, different from the others, I only contributed one essay to this wonderful book, but I really suggest you all to give a look at it.
Thank you, Joanna. And we also have another contributor in chat, Angelo Nasios. Thank you for contributing. I think his chapter was Why Do Some Polytheists Reject the Term Pagan? And also, sorry, go on.
I should say that I found Angelo from formerly what was formerly Twitter, because when we announced that this book was coming, there was this reply, and I thought, oh, great, I will invite you to contribute a chapter. And that was quite a while ago, but I remembered, I took a note of this, and then was able to invite this contribution about why polytheists reject the label pagan. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. And Angelo, yes, it's definitely spider dance, not spiral dance.
Oh, spiral dance by Starhawk, yes.
I don't know if, yeah.
This is spider dance by Sabina.
Yeah. Just in case I used I can't remember if I said it wrong, but if I did, it's the spider dance.
Thank you very much. Can I add something that has to do with why
Sure.
I decided to get on the pagan identity? So when I started teaching at HDS, I started teaching because the administration realized I was doing a postdoc actually here, so no formal teaching on paganism was offered. But then because of the renovations of the divinity school, the actual buildings of the divinity school, they had to fell an oak tree. And in occasion of this, the pagan community among the students just to sort of, study and say, hey, how can do we have to touch these oak trees? Important to us. We are animus. These are personal for us. And so the administration realized that we're pagans among this student body. Something they probably the students didn't, feel comfortable, sharing with the administration. And so when I started teaching, I started to take on this identity with my students because it was probably the first time they ever saw someone teaching, and especially in an Ivy League, who was also a pagan, right? And this has something to do with also the stigma attached to the term paganism that we have reclaimed, another before me. But again, it's a personal, individual choice. But in my case, it was a political one, and a very important one to allow students to identify with, some and validate their the spiral dance or Starhawk, right? Indirectly, and I think that Starhawk, at least, if not total. Owning, queer identities, and just wanted to mention to flag them because I think it's important. And I'm thinking about, for example, the ethnography in Montreal in Canada of Lepage around queer community. There's also, reinterpretations of theologies, for example, of the masculine and the feminine, right, archetypes in queer ways that, are just a reinvention, a recrafting of different images to talk about different experiences. And the fact that, there's lots of creativity within pagan spaces, both in terms of, beliefs and practices, allows for a particularly generative space to inhabit in order to expand, one's ideas and practice around oneself.
What do you think that is the most misunderstood thing about paganism? And anyone can ask. I'm just going to ask questions to the whole panel, and whoever wants to answer is welcome to.
Well, I think the first thing that came to my mind is actually the one sort of is a misconception about religion generally, not just paganism, and that is the focus on belief, which we get in northwestern countries and North America, that it's about belief. And this is actually a very I guess unique view that came out of Protestant Christian
This is actually 100% correct. This is something that I rail against and talk on and get on my soapbox on a lot. So this is a correct observation.
cultures, perhaps. That you
In
don't
fact,
really
I was
find
just talking about this yesterday on my super secret stream with Michael Beverly.
Around elsewhere, that that belief in gods or god goddess is actually what is defining of paganism, and I think that goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the doing and the practices and how this sort of nominalism, or sort of this commitment to belief that is expected in like a church context is not really the main feature or the main requirement for membership, or I guess.
Yeah, it's practice, not belief.
If you have membership at all in other groups, and
It's about trust. It's not about intellectual assent.
so that's one of the things I think is you often get a belief type
Or
question
reason.
first, and yes, that might not be where the person is coming from. or hides it, or sort of raises as a essential.
Yes, Suzanne.
I think that was a really strong and good point, actually.
Sorry, Joanne. I
Points
was
to
just
Dr.
thinking
Owen.
Also because paganism doesn't have a doctrine or sacred text in the way that Christianity or Judaism or Islam has. It's less likely that a pagan will say other people are doing paganism wrong or their beliefs are wrong. So it's much more open in that sense for people to have different beliefs and still be pagan. So I think that can be a hard thing for people to grasp. As you said, that it's not kind of founded in belief, if you like. It's people can be pagan in different ways and contradictory ways, and that's okay in the pagan community to be, or even to be in a ritual group like a coven or a grove of druids, that people can believe different things and they can still practice ritual together. So that's quite interesting as well. I would say that another misconception is that paganism is evil or it's somehow anti-Christian, for example, where I think in my experience anyway of interviewing pagans, it's more that they might be antagonistic because of the dominance of Christianity in their lives or the control over their lives more than it being about belief and practice. It's in many ways Christianity is irrelevant to pagans. So I think that's another misconception, that it's something that has to be defined against Christianity.
Thank you. Joanna, did you want to say something?
Yes, in my experience, and in addition to what Susanna and Jenny just said, is that especially the more eclectic side of paganism is associated with the spiritual supermarket, self-centered, hyper-individualistic way to engage with spirituality, which we can see a lot about this written by academics and non about New Age spaces, but also about pagan spaces and New Religious movements in general. And I think this is absolutely.
Just to follow on quickly from what Vivian said there, I was also thinking about how people are coming to paganism oftentimes through social media, through TikTok, or that's how they.
Conception, but I think one of the things that has to be remembered about contemporary paganism is that it's rapidly evolving.
Contemporary paganism. Okay, that's what we're talking about here.
And the spiritual context in which paganism exists is rapidly evolving as well. So we've seen enormous changes in paganism.
I wonder if contemporary paganism and popular paganism would be slightly different. In other words, what you get from Barnes & Noble and different bookstores versus what you get from, I guess, more erudite, more educated practitioners. It would be strongly different or have different emphasis.
From the late 19th century through the 20th century and now into the 21st century, and it's going to be evolving further still. So it's very much a moving target. So trying to pinpoint it at any moment in time can be quite difficult. But we can see some of the trends that are present. But how it's going to evolve in the future remains to be seen. As I think one of the interesting things for me about contemporary paganism and younger people now self-identifying as pagan is that most of them have no religious background. They haven't come from practicing a form of Christianity and decided perhaps I'm religious, but I can't accept the idea of a male god. I'm drawn.
Yeah, they're just coming into it out of nowhere, and they're just kind of making up their own thing. But that's how it's been for at least since the 50s. Since the 50s and 60s, people are just making up what paganism is in a modern context.
To a religion with a goddess, and so if you like, they literally convert from one religion to another. Quite often, people are starting off feeling, what is the meaning of life? I feel I have spiritual needs, but I don't really have a language for this. I have no religious practices.
I really love everything this lady's saying. I really hope she's a real doctor, because I really like what she's saying. I really like this lady. I like her. I know where she's coming from, but I'm not into that. I'm not into this. Dr. Owen, I've only really, I don't know. I like what she said so far, and I don't really know what Angela believes yet.
I don't really know how to find a way of engaging with these feelings I have within me. So people are coming to paganism really totally ignorant, if you like, of spiritual practice. And that's an interesting challenge for those perhaps amongst us who also function as ministers or as chaplains or as priests or priesthood, to actually help people find spirituality itself and how they can make it part of their own life and their everyday lives.
Mm-hmm. Just to follow on quickly from what Vivian said there, I was also thinking about how people are coming to paganism oftentimes through social media, through TikTok, or that's how they're coming to the community rather than meeting people. Let's say in the 80s or 90s, it was very different how someone might first come across paganism as a spirituality. So I think that's also quite different for the community building and how that works. So yeah, as Vivian said, it's always changing, and yeah.
Okay, I like that, but I think we're gonna move on because, yeah, we're moving on. We're moving on. Moving on. Diablo critics. Moving on. Diablo critics. The critics of Diablo. Yes, you've all gotten it wrong. Diablo critics are the critics of Diablo. They fight Diablo tooth and nail to criticize him until he cries and wants to know why he's not passing his Hebrew language courses. There's nothing Diablo hates more than Hebrew language courses. Bow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow.
In the Christian church. Should Christians rise up and overthrow the government? Would Jesus have stormed the Capitol on January 6th? That last one was a personal question to look at. Welcome everyone to Diablo Critics, a monthly live stream where Bible scholars take a look at questionable sermons and apologetics. Today we're continuing our look at some sermons from Pastor Mark Driscoll. Is the government attacking the Christian church? Should Christians rise up and overthrow the government?
No.
Would Jesus have stormed the Capitol on January 6th?
No.
The last one was a personal question. He didn't really ask the last one. That was just me. But here to answer your questions are our Bible scholars for today, Dr. Kip Davis,
Boo!
Dr. John
Boo!
Bond, and
Yay!
Dr. McClellan. Critics.
Good morning, everyone. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, Dan. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm really glad that you finally come to realize that an associate's in philosophy deserves to be on the same panel with you. I was really feeling rejected beforehand, and now I feel really, well pleased, welcomed. It's really a highlight of my career to be on a panel with such learned men as yourself and Dan. But you know, it's still an honor. Still an honor.
Good evening, everyone. How y'all doing?
Good evening.
There we go. Right. I don't know. It sort of feels like, even though Mark Driscoll didn't directly ask that question about the about the insurrection, there was some, wink, wink, nudge, nudge implication. Interpret this however you will. Is that just me?
I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong. I think he's insinuating that Jesus wouldn't have stormed the Capitol because he would have been the guy on the White House lawn saying storm the Capitol.
There you go.
No. He did overthrow tables, right? Or something in the temple?
He was a table turner.
A table turner. Yes. Yes. So welcome everyone to Diablo Critics. It's Sunday, the 17th of November.
That's his first lie. It is Monday. It is the 18th of November. He's already lying to you. See? Scholars are liars.
It's just after 11 in the morning here in the...
It is 11:15 at night, Kip. Liar.
Pacific Coast, the right coast, the specific...
Central Time, Texas. The greatest state in the United States? Of course.
Coast.
In the greatest country in the world? Yes. Does that mean that Texas is the greatest state in the world? Possibly.
You regular viewers will notice a couple of things are different today. First of all, this isn't being simulcast on anyone else's channel, and that has to do with some technical glitches that we literally discovered like 3 minutes before airtime.
Dan is jealous of my balding. It's true. He wishes he had as little hair as I do.
Yeah, we've been scrambling a little bit.
He looks like a dentist.
I think to get going today, but we're here. Most of us are here, which brings me to the second thing that everyone will have noticed. Our friend Jennifer Bird is not with us today, and I'm sad to report that she has decided to step down from the Diablo critics from the platform. She said that when I asked her, what she wanted to say publicly about this decision, she said to me that she's tired of having to do a lot of the emotional work in responding to Christian apologists. It's not really something that she does on her own channel, on her own social media platforms, and the toll in engaging them as well as in the next day or two or three, it's been a lot for her to get out of her system. It's sad, I think. Well, yeah, I'm sad about it, and I'm, Jen, if you're watching, we miss you. But we totally get it. We support your decision, and I continue to look forward to opportunities to work with you and to collaborate in the future on.
I mean, almost everybody in my audience has their own YouTube channel, except for Thomas. I don't think, Thomas, you do, but I know most people who watch my channel regularly are people who I've debated against and have both alt channels where we communicate and have main channels where they're actually very popular and are under different personas than the persona that they present here on my channel, which is fine. And all of us have had to deal with the 20 or 30 or 40 responses from one particular person who really doesn't like what we have to say. And they'll get ugly, they'll get vitriolic. I know when I originally started my channel, I wanted to be a free speech absolutist. And by year 3, I was like, I got to start banning people, which sucked. It really does suck. So I don't know what backstage drama or what anything else is going on their channels or between them. But just from the front page stuff that they're saying, it's absolutely true. This is not for everybody. And doing this kind of stuff, engaging in what is arguments, not like defenses, not like arguments, but I mean like actual ugly arguments where people will insult you. They'll call you Satan. They'll call you terrible, horrible things. They'll threaten you. They'll threaten your family and your livelihood. This happens. And so if that is the reason why she's like, I don't want to do it, that is very legitimate. This is not for everybody. And I wish I was actually more famous and making more money off of this to justify the amount of work that I put into this and to the amount of ugliness that I have to deal with on a daily basis due to this channel. There are videos from like 2 years ago that people still get on, and it'll be maybe a 20-page essay about how I'm wrong and how I'm evil and all this other stuff. So yes, I mean it's tough to deal with, and especially if you're a scholar and you have income from something else, I can see why you wouldn't want to engage with some of the most ignorant and hateful people on the internet. So that's completely fair, completely valid.
On future projects, Matt was just on our channel actually a couple of days ago.
And I'm going to be on our channel coming up about a month from now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's so.
And I wouldn't be surprised if not a lot of the I'm gonna call it fallout probably came from her engagement in the conversation with Gavin Ortlund. They look so much alike. Because Gavin Ortlund's stuff is a very hot topic, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Christians in question, the evangelicals, said things that in their mind may have been acceptable, but came off to her as very ugly and regressive. So yeah, and ignorant.
Yeah, so internet, stop making kind of drama about us having this like backstage fight where we were throwing curse words at each other, and no, I don't think anyone thinks that.
I'm the only one that uses profanity off air, and it is it's pretty vicious, but none of that needs to be public. So.
And I'm the only one who uses profanity on the air. So
Not true. I'll do it too.
Not true.
So
I will say this is not, in my experience, something that is uncommon. I'm thinking of two specific, rather high tier biblical scholars that if I mention their names, everybody in the audience would know them,
Mm-hmm.
have said to me when I've approached them, hey, could you? And these are people that have done public-facing work on these platforms before, and I said, hey, there's this video that's come out, this apologist who, for some godforsaken reason, people watch, and could you come and respond? And they'll just
Thomas and Lisa, if you're still watching, how's the sound? Because I have my wave mic is reading negative 1.4 dB. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. Let me know. I'm going to step away for a second and put some nasal spray. Let me know if the sound's okay. Honey, I need to get up. I know. I'm so sorry. I know. This is so terrible of me. Come on, get up. I know. I love you too, but you need to jump. Thank you. For those wondering at home, my nasal spray of choice is Vicks nasal spray. Shall we continue?
say, please don't involve me. I can't take it. I up to here with Christian apologetics. And it's unfortunate, I think, in that regard, because those Christian apologists will often take that as a W, right?
Yeah.
And say, they don't have anything to say. Well, pay attention, Christian apologetics. What they're saying is you're not worth the energy that it takes to respond to. So, take that
And
as you will.
It's so frequently a bad faith engagement as well, that the emotional labor is so taxing. I get questions every single day.
I don't think it's bad faith. I get why, Dan, you specifically, considering you're on TikTok, you would think it's bad faith. I've received way more bad faith arguments from atheists than I ever have from Christians. Almost every Christian that I've interacted with, especially those who disagree with me, they really believe what they're saying, and they honestly disagree with what I'm saying. It's not, they're not being bad faith. They just disagree fundamentally. I have had atheists come in and present a false positive argument, a false positive case, just to try to get me to argue with them. I don't think that's what most of the Christians are doing. I think the Christians are honestly trying to convert you, but they don't have the data that you have. They don't have the references. They don't have the material. They haven't read the stuff. And they've been told by their pastor, by their Sunday school teacher, by their parents, that if you just hear the truth, you'll come to it. And so they're presenting you with the truth as they understand it. And it's, it's below rudimentary, especially at someone who's at your level. And so I get that. Now, if you're telling me that a Mark Driscoll or a Trent Horn or a James White is coming at you with bad faith, that's a different thing. if they are, then that might be a legitimate accusation. I don't know that they have, but I think most of the people who are responding to you, they're giving you their best argument. They're giving you their best understanding. You just don't agree with them, and they don't know the same stuff that you know.
Across all my social media platforms, how do you deal with the emotional
Plain and
labor
simple
of having
faith.
to engage with folks who
The
are
faith
not
of a
going to
child.
listen, are not going to engage in good faith? And so, yeah, I think there's, I know it, and I know.
Dan, you're welcome to engage with me. I'll engage in good faith. I'm engaging in good faith now. I think I said that right. Dan, I've invited Dr. Bowen on my channel. He hasn't showed up to my channel. I've invited Dr. Kip on my channel. I think he's scared of me because of how handsome I am. I don't think he can handle a conversation with this chin. Look at this. Look at this chin. Look at this. I shaved because I knew I was going to talk to Kip, and I know he's hiding his chin with that beard. Look at this. Look at this beauty. Look at this. It's okay. But Dan, I've never invited you on this channel, or if I have, I don't remember. So I'm inviting you, Dan McCullen, to challenge me in a battle of Mormonism versus Catholicism, of scholarship versus readership, of subscribers versus no one really watches, and I will dominate you.
Well, an awful lot of people who are like, I can never do that. I'm going to stay here in scholarship. I'm not doing public-facing scholarship because it's not worth the emotional labor. No.
It's almost like this state of mind you have to go into. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a Bible scholar, but when I've engaged with people online, a lot of members from my previous church.
Well, I debated with people back in the blood sports days of the internet, of YouTube, and that was brutal. And I probably should have moved on to TikTok and Clubhouse and Modern Day Debate, but I didn't. For whatever reason, my arguments, even when I won my debates, didn't resonate, and I didn't get any publicity out of my appearances on other people's channels. You know, but I would love to. Even today, I would gladly go on Modern Day Debate. I'd gladly have the arguments that me and Leo used to have on Gar's channel. I'd love to have them on a giant platform. Danny knows me. I know Danny. We both are married to Chinese women. I would love to debate him again on a larger platform. Most definitely. But for whatever reason, I'm not popular. I'm probably never going to be popular. So, you know, it is what it is.
Like LGBT issues or something, I have to almost go into like a emotionally like totally shut off and just be like a robot, like these are the facts and this is like here is an argument. Like I have to be like really, because
that's my persona.
Yeah, but you can't get into the emotions of it because it's too taxing. It's really hard to deal with. Yeah.
And I mean, sorry, just one last thing. I mean, thinking about it from somebody like Dr. Bird's perspective, she's not only having to step into that arena with bad apologetics, but she's having to step into that arena with bad apologetics that are coming at her as a woman.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how she put up with it as long as she did, frankly, because I certainly am not strong enough to have put up with it for that long. So.
Yeah, I think that definitely is a component in this as well. So moving forward, though, I'll just get this out up front. We are not doing a show next month, and it's Christmas all month long here in Canada. So you know, not
you guys
really.
got Christmas all month long?
Oh, yeah. Well, come on, man. You were here. So actually, though, when I went to pick up dog food last week, they already had the music on and the decorations up, and this is a little something a little different here, I think, maybe than in the States, because I think you guys at least hold off until after Thanksgiving. But yeah,
is that
anyways,
the problem with that early Canadian Thanksgiving thing? So maybe it is after Thanksgiving for you too, right?
That's right. It's just way
really
early. Yeah. So no show next month. And we're going to we're going to take the time and use it to maybe kind of reflect and recalibrate a little bit in terms of what we want this show to be moving forward. And I would encourage you as well in the audience, if this is a platform that you enjoy, if this is something you like us doing once a month, then please feel free to reach out and provide some thoughts and suggestions on what you would like to see as well. So yeah, with that out of the way, unless anyone else has stuff to throw in, maybe we'll just start. So
let's get into the fire.
If I can throw my hat in, I don't know that any of these guys are going to watch this, but let's hope that Dr. Kip at least maybe sees this. The previous segment that I was on, if it didn't annoy you with my bad jokes, I would love for you to interview Angela Suka. I'd be interested for you to talk about paganism, especially since you have a strong understanding of the ancient world, to see how you to contrast your understandings of Christianity, Judaism, and global spirituality, and how you guys would argue, because she's a believer, I'm assuming, in her paganism. So that would be a different aspect for you guys to come at. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see you engage with scholars of different flavors instead of just countering Catholics, just countering Christian apologists, and just speaking to fellow biblical scholars, but to those who are scholars in other fields of religion, whether it be Buddhism, paganism. I know that's so broad, but ancient Greek paganism, maybe ancient Canaanite paganism, Babylonianism. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying now, but like the ancient Kev religion, whatever, like get into like Taoism, that kind of stuff. I'd love to see you speak to scholars who are experts in different fields of religion. Yeah.
Oh yeah, one more thing about the format for today's show. We're mixing it up. Instead of saving all the super chats and the questions until the end, feel free to fire those.
Is that like the Turkish flag? Is that green, white, and red? What's going on there?
Off as they enter your brain. I don't know. Feel free to fire them off whenever you'd like to ask questions, and we will take a look at those periodically as we go through the video today, and and we'll see how this goes. So we're continuing. Mark Driscoll did a whole series of like 3 videos called "Vote Like Jesus." I actually think this was mostly just about sending a
By the way, this is pre-watched for me. I already watched this video beforehand. So if you're wondering why my jokes sound funnier than the jokes that I made in the previous video, that we just watched together, because I've seen this before, so I'm a little bit more prepared.
Doing some free PR for his new book, which Matt actually bit the bullet and purchased.
Oh,
and
speaking
read.
of which, I am going to do Dan McCullen's book on this channel. Oh, I mean, assuming I still have a channel when I come back from where I'm going. And I am going to be doing Gavin Ortland's, and I am going to be doing the Book of Mormon. Yes, I've fallen behind on the Book of Mormon. I am going to do that. I will get into that. Don't worry. Even if I have to do it from another country, I will still talk about the Book of Mormon on here.
Thank you, Matt, for your service. So this is we've decided to jump ahead to the last video. What was the title? What's the title of the last video there?
Should conservatives overthrow the government?
And I think
conservatives overthrow the government.
And is the government attacking the Christian church?
And I think the answers to those questions are a most definite maybe, aren't they? So
I would actually say yes. I think there are Christian principles, biblical principles, dogmatic principles that the culture is turning against. And I think there are some Christians who feel that is a type of persecution, or at least a type of turning away from. And they take that personally. I don't think it's the kind of persecution that's happening in, let's say, Egypt or Palestine or other countries where Christian churches are actively burned and people are killed and other terrible, horrible things happen to them just for them being Christian. I don't think it's the same type of persecution. But I do think there is there was, at least until Trump won, a turning away from Christianity in the greater culture and the greater political landscape of the United States, of Canada, most definitely, of France, of Mexico. Like, there is a turn away from religion. So to say that there isn't, I think is a little dishonest. It doesn't matter if the majority of the country is still religious. The majority of the government doesn't ascribe to a particular religion, and that can feel as an affront or as an offense to certain sensitive Christians.
Well, so I mean, I think already here we have to acknowledge,
and not just Christians, but Muslims and Jews, and I'm sure there's some Hindus who would like to see Hinduism represented more in our government. So yeah,
space that we're in this time is very different than last time, because that's true. Because Driscoll won, And so like we somehow we have to look at this as effective rhetoric and strategy, not just propaganda or whatever. So it's interesting. I think it's something that
I think this is a very good point on, what's his name, Matthew Spart.
When you say should conservatives overthrow the government, well, you don't
Is anyone watching Dune Prophecy? I tried watching it this morning and I fell asleep. I'm going to try to watch it again tonight. And if I fall asleep, hey, at least I get to sleep at night.
have to if you win it through the election. So I think we're already there actually. But it's just interesting to think that we sat here a month ago and wondered who would be convinced by this kind of rhetoric, and here we are.
Dan's going to make a point that's really stupid. Dan, I hope you don't start disliking me. I hope you're still at least tolerant of me. But seriously, you're about to make a point that is really dumb, and it's very presumptuous. And I wish you hadn't said what you're about to say, because it's an appeal to ignorance. It's really bad, and I get it. I don't think anybody of these scholars voted for Trump, or if they were American, would have voted for Trump. I get it. Maybe none of you are even Republican or conservative, although it's possible Josh might be a little conservative, maybe on the inside, deep down, and somewhere underneath a tweed jacket. But you shouldn't discount the majority of the world just because they're conservative or traditional or believe something that you consider silly or stupid. And I don't just mean Christianity. I mean all religious ideas. You shouldn't discount these people and discount their intelligence. Actually, I was talking today. People thought I was stupid because I'm dyslexic and I can't spell, and my math is terrible. My math is just terrible. And then in my senior year in high school, because I was in remedial courses for dyslexia and I was in speech development courses and that kind of stuff, I found out I was going to graduate with a GED equivalent, not even a GED. And so I was like, no, I'm going to test out of this program. And they're like, well, you shouldn't do that, because to get into the program as a kindergartner, actually, no, first grader, as a first grader to get into the program, all you have to do is fail one test. And to get out of it now as a senior in high school, I would have to pass all the tests. And it's an IQ test. And they're like, you're going to be really humiliated. You're going to see that you're not that smart, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff, right? I'm like, I don't care. I'm not graduating. I went to school. I was actually in school this entire time. I'm taking this test. And they're like, okay, but just know that if by some miracle, by some chance you actually pass, we're gonna lose funding, and you're not going to be able to be partaking in these programs that have been assisting you. You're going to lose all your aid. I'm like, I don't care. I'm graduating. So I take the test, and on math, I think I scored normal. I score average, whatever. On reading and comprehension, I got a perfect score. There's like 3 parts or 4 parts to the test. Basically, I score above average to whatever the extreme high is on almost everything. And on comprehension, perfect score. I had a higher score on that test than anyone else in my school. Period. I had the highest IQ in my school at that time. And they had me in remedial courses. So I think that it is a false assumption, or a temptation to a false assumption, to assume that because someone isn't as educated as you, or because they don't have as many credentials as you, that they're somehow less intelligent or less capable than you, or because they hold beliefs that you don't respect, that they're somehow less intelligent than you. I think that's false, and that's a danger that happens in scholarship. Because, yeah, you can say to me outright, you don't speak any of the original languages. That's true. But you can't tell me I haven't read these books. Because I started off with the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I worked my way all the way up through the Bible. I worked my way through the Loeb Classics collection. I worked my way through the Penguin Classics collection. And what books were not available in those two, I either got from the Everyman Library or from the Oxford Classics selection to get my way to the Bible so that way I could understand the Bible in its full context, historically, literarily, referentially. And that to me was super important. So, and I've also read multiple translations of the Bible. I own the Bible in Hebrew. I own the Bible in Spanish. I own the Bible in Chinese, Mandarin for all, whatever reason, my wife. I've read it in Spanish. I've read it in English. I've attempted to read it in Latin. So, yeah, okay, I don't have the degrees, but that doesn't mean I'm an idiot. And I think discounting Driscoll, discounting Tyler Marshall, discounting James White. I'm picking the people who I disagree with, by the way. I'm not picking the people you disagree with. Discounting them as idiotic because they don't have a level of comprehension or they don't come to the same conclusions as you doesn't mean that they don't have a strategy. Doesn't mean that they don't understand exactly what they're doing for their audience. And that might be more Machiavellian than you're comfortable with. That might be more manipulative, more cynical than you'd think someone of faith would be. But it is totally probable. So they could be con artists for all we know. I'm not saying they are, allegedly. I'm not saying they are, but they could be really intelligent con artists. So I think you downplaying their intelligence because they say things that you think are stupid is a mistake in your strategy to counter them. Be a little bit more cynical and understand that they may be saying this to manipulate their audience. They might be saying this because they truly believe this. They could be saying this to lie to themselves. So there's much more going on there in the minds of a Mark Driscoll and a James White. Dear crap, forgive me for saying so. Maybe even in Mike Winger, there's more going on there than what meets the eye. I really am doubtful on the Mike Winger one, but it is possible.
Turns out most voters, right? Yeah,
most people.
Yeah, most people. So, yeah.
Well,
So-
not most voters, a minority, a plurality, but still a minority of
right,
the
right.
people who voted, which constitute less than half of the registered voters as well. So,
But see, the problem with that statement, and this is the statement that I wish that Dan hadn't said, is that now you're assuming, through implication, that the people who didn't vote agreed with you, or at least wouldn't have voted for Trump. You don't know that. If it was by law that people had to vote, Trump could have won by a much larger margin. So I would not have said the statement that you said because it shows your disdain for the people who support Trump. And I think that disdain is what's dividing this particular nation apart for the last 15 years. I think even further than 15 years. I think since since Bush 2, I think this has been a growing division in the United States, and I think it is a real problem. The Democrats, the progressives, those on the left, don't want to platform, don't want to speak to, don't want to have discussions with people on the right of any degree. Even those who are liberal on all other topics but one topic of conservative mindset is enough to get them rejected and to lose and to deplatform them and to cancel them. And that is making it to where now the Democratic left, which is very important for the health of democracy to have a healthy Democratic left, is now isolating themselves and ostraching themselves, to quote Adam and Stitch, to where they're going to be on blue sky and they're just not going to engage into the greater conversation. I think that's incredibly dangerous. I think what you all are doing is incredibly good. It's good that you're actually highlighting what the other group is saying. You're actually countering, showing arguments. I'm not saying you all are convincing. I don't even think Trent Horn is convincing. So I'm not saying you all are convincing, but what you're doing is great. It's healthy. But this attitude, when it's expressed by other people like Destiny, is horrific and ugly and terrible. I think Destiny hurts the Democratic Party. It hurts the democratic process. I think he hurts free speech. I think he hurts the platforms that he's on. That's why he's been banned from platforms, because of what he says is so outrageous. I think people like Fuentes also are horrible people who also say outlandish things for outlandish reasons, but they're strategic. Destiny's strategic. He's rich for all the stuff he's saying. Alex Jones, we can all agree that he says wrong things, but hot dog it made him rich until it didn't, until he got sued out of existence. But it made him rich, wealthy. So I would not have said what you said, and I would not discount the people who disagree with you the way that you discount them, because they are intelligent. They do work for a living. They do have wisdom that you don't have. They have practical knowledge that you don't have. Yeah, maybe they're a plumber. Maybe they're your IT guy, whatever. But that's knowledge and skills you don't have. And I'm not saying that you don't have that particular skill. I'm saying that the mass majority of people are going to know things you don't know, and they're going to think differently than you think because their experience, their life experience, and their knowledge base is so different from yours. They're not reading a book every day. They're out there taking care of their family. They're farmers, they're ranchers, they're plumbers, they're construction workers, they're car salesmen. And to discount these people just because they haven't read the Bible in the original Hebrew is a mistake, and it's going to cost the left more and more elections, and it's going to cause an erosion of the types of freedoms that progressives are trying to protect. And that includes harming LGBTQ rights and women's rights, the way that you understand them. If you want to protect those rights, you have to engage with people who disagree with you, and you have to not discount them and degrade them and demean them because they don't have access to the information that you have.
So,
True.
a minority of voters.
Touche. Just before we start here, Jen, thank you for coming out, and we miss you. So yeah, thanks for being here. All right. So I guess let's just to kind of tee this up here. Mark Driscoll is going to talk a lot in this video about the shape of early Judaism, which is fun. So let's take a look.
3 in the Vote Like Jesus sermon series, and today's topic is what are the 5 political options for Christians. If you want to learn more, grab the book, but this is the sermon I've been the most excited about, and I believe I have some.
This was before I went to church on Sunday. I was listening to this. I did church with my dad. He has this dementia, so it's problematic getting him to Mass every Sunday. And then this Sunday, not his fault, my fault, I overslept and I was tired. So we're eating at Jason's Deli, and I'm listening to this while my dad is slowly eating I don't know if it was a Reuben or a pastrami. I think it was a pastrami sandwich. And I'm there eating a salad and listening to these guys comment on Driscoll. Very interesting way to spend my pre-Mass, my pre-church time, pre-Mass time.
Some revelation for you. After more than 30 years of teaching the Bible, I'm going to share some things with you today that my assumption is.
Over 15 years of martial arts experience, teaching martial arts. Over 10 years of teaching the Tao Te Ching, the Art of War, the Book of Tea, the Book of Five Rings. And 11 years talking religion on YouTube. I'm just saying, Mark Driscoll, simmer down and realize you're in the presence of the great.
Most of you, perhaps none of you, have ever heard. And it's not anything that isn't in the Bible, but it hasn't been seen through the lens that I want to show it to you today. And I want you to know.
Did you see the tell? Did you see the tell? Hold on. Look, he's lying.
Some things
Look
with
here,
you
look
today
here, look here, look
that my
here.
assumption is most of you, perhaps none of you, have ever heard. And it's not anything that isn't in the Bible,
Okay.
but it hasn't been seen through the lens that I want to show it to you today.
You see
and
it?
I want you to know that here we are.
Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see his eyes go to the lie section? I saw
in
it.
our day, and we're heading into election season, and there are numerous political parties, but there are two primary. One to the left, the Democrats, one to the right, the Republicans. Many Christians would say we shouldn't talk about politics and political parties.
So these kind of distinctions are modern distinctions. They're not ingrained into human society. So this is already a stupid game of analogy, just to be very blunt. Don't get me wrong. These type of analogies are very fine. They're very fair to do. You can read Livy, you can read Herodias, and you can see parallels with modern politics and modern geopolitical situations. The analogy is fine. But drawing direct connections and saying that because of this, it's this, is it's stupidito.
Parties. Well, we must, because these things are absolutely taught and found in the Word of God. If you
They are not.
go back 2,000 years, there were two primary parties. On the
Okay. Jerusalem, Judea, Palestine, small. Rome, big. Hellenistic culture, huge. Rome political party, important. Political factions fighting with each other. Pompey, Caesar, Augustine, whoever the hell else. Let's say there's two political parties fighting for power in New Brunswick. I don't know anything about New Brunswick. Let's just assume. That has nothing to do with what's going on for the presidency. It has nothing to do with what's going on with the Green Party or the Lib Party, let alone the Democrat and the Republican Party. Yes, Republican and Democrats are there. Yes, they both vote. But let's say they have another party called something else. That is not a premonition of a new party coming to power in the United States. I'm using America as an example, an American city, as an example of how this analogy does not work. You're going back 2,000 years.
On the left was the Sadducees, on the right was the Pharisees. In addition, there were other lesser known parties. And when we
Okay. So you want to talk about conservative Judaism? I don't think you have I don't think you have distinctions correct.
read the New Testament, we hear about parties like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. We don't know who those people are. The Bible doesn't tell us in great detail what they believed or how they behaved, because everyone 2,000 years ago knew exactly who we were talking about. Similarly, today, if I said, well, there's Democrats and Republicans, if you got a Hebrew from 2,000 years ago, they wouldn't know what we were talking about. So distance means sometimes there needs to be a little teaching to fill in the gap. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at what the New Testament says about these various parties. And I want to start with two scriptures on ancient parties. And these are like our political parties. These are social, religious, moral, spiritual, governmental commitments. And
this is so stupid. This is so stupid.
here's what we see in Acts chapter 5, verse 17. The high priest rose up, and all who were with him, that is the party of the Sadducees, and they were filled with jealousy. These would be the ancient Democrats. These are the progressives. These are the liberals.
No, the progressives, the liberals, those who are breaking with tradition radically, are the Christians. The Christians are the radical progressive, let's let women in, let's let prostitutes in, let's let tax collectors in. That's the Christians. You jackass.
Liberals. That's why I'm using my left hand. Okay, and then in Acts chapter 15, verse 5, but some believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees rose up. They would be kind of like the Republicans. They are the conservatives. Hence, I'm using my right hand. And so what we see in the days of Jesus, there were two primary parties, one on the left, one on the right. Sound familiar? In addition, there were other parties that we will deal with as well. And so here's where the sermon is going to go. I made a chart for you, and it's in the book. There are 4 different ways that parties reacted to social, governmental, and political conditions in the first century.
This is just projection.
My thesis is that we still have those people following in these same patterns. So some were fight. These would be the ancient zealots. These would be the current modern day civil disobedience folks.
Okay, so in actuality, the zealots would be the ultra white right wing. They'd be the Christian nationalists. They'd be the more I'm thinking here about the Proud Boys. You know, these are violent revolutionaries. These are the preppers. You know, this is not, being a zealot is not a good thing.
You have the flee or flight. That would be the ancient Essenes. And these are the modern homesteaders and the preppers. We love.
No. So the Essenes, those who wanted to run away, these are the people, this is kind of more like the current Democrats who want to leave the country and go to another country to get away from the potential problems here in the United States. These are people who are expats, who want to go to different countries to get away from the dangers of the world. They want to go to an isolated place in Alaska. They want to go to an isolated place in Canada. They want to go to, you know, a peaceful Asian island somewhere that's away from everybody and everything. And they want to practice their religion. That's who they are. They're religious extremists who want to run away from any political situation. Like yeah.
Thanks for driving down from Payson. On the left, there would be those who were the ancient Sadducees. Today they are the modern progressives. And on the right are the ancient Pharisees or the modern day fundamentalists. Okay? So let me.
I don't know. I kind of think he has that flipped. But again, the progressives, the more liberal would be the Christians, because the Christians are tearing down the social order and they're being revolutionary. I think the Pharisees and the Sadducees more represent the conservative Christians and fundamentalists. I would say both the Sadducees and the Pharisees are evangelicals, modern Calvinist. That's what I would say. Fundamentalist and Calvinist, both. Make the distinction, divide it up how you will.
Political, social, moral, cultural issues. The zealots, let's go fight. Right? The Essenes are, let's go buy some land and avoid it. The Sadducees were, let's compromise and become liberal so we don't get in trouble with the government or with the culture. The Pharisees decided, let's go to the right, carve out a subculture, homeschool our kids, and get our candidates nominated, and no longer watch any of that stuff on Disney+. So these are the 4 teams. These are the 4 teams. Okay, do you get it? All right, this is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah, let's pause it there, because there's a lot there. What is everyone's problem with, what's wrong with Disney+?
They don't like the super supportive trans stuff. That's what it was. Disney, some of their executives, including an executive that okayed or greenlit a lot of bad television shows that were not very good. They were badly written, badly produced. Happened to also say that she had a trans agenda and a queer agenda, and that's why conservatives don't like her. And so, by transitive property, they don't like the entire company or the entire media. And this, you can see this in like Agatha All Along, where they have a trans flag in the background, or in Across the Spider-Verse, where they had a trans flag in Miles Morales' room. I think it was Miles Morales'. It might have been in Gwen Stacy's room. Anyway, because of that, certain people don't like Disney and Disney Plus because they feel it has a gay agenda. Not only a feminist agenda, but a gay agenda. A gay feminist agenda, I guess.
I think they just see too much woke stuff on there, and
too many female leads, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of like
It isn't
gays in the animating industry, and the gays they'll come for your kids.
Probably. By the way,
That was
I
a
started
joke, everyone,
watching.
by the way.
I started watching a show on Disney Plus last week called.
You want to watch something really good? Go watch Arcane Season 2. It's really good. Kip, if you're watching, I know every once in a while you watch one of my videos. Arcane Season 2, go watch it. If you haven't seen Season 1, go see it right now. But go watch Arcane. You'll cry every episode, and you'll laugh every episode. And yeah, it's a great show. It's absolutely amazing.
Don't say anything. It's all about the IRA. It's pretty great. Anyways, yeah.
Although Arcane's a Netflix show, but yeah.
So this is the outline. Driscoll has some really creative ways of presenting the situation in first century Jerusalem, first century Palestine at the time of Jesus, and he's constructed this whole message, this whole presentation on some pretty specific ideas about the people who were living there, how they were organizing themselves politically and religiously. Just one thing that stuck out to me at the outset here was Driscoll making the claim. I don't know if you guys caught that right at the outset, that he's got new revelation about this.
I didn't hear that.
These are, some of his ideas about this.
I didn't catch
Kind
that.
of feels like he's promoting something divinely novel. I don't know.
It's definitely new. I don't think it's a revelation.
Definitely new. So,
It's new.
thoughts at the outset?
I think one of the most a phenomenally common fallacy is the assumption that everything operated identically in the ancient world as it does today. And so this notion that you can just identify parties and line them up with factions today is fallacious from the start. And all you have to do is try to generalize some feature of a specific group and generalize some feature of today.
I think people still think similar to the way people thought in ancient times. I don't think the human mind has evolved as much as we like to think it has. But it doesn't mean that there hasn't been evolutions in thoughts. There has been leaps in technology and reasoning. There has. But I just don't think we're as evolved as we think we are. And I don't think we're as distant from the caveman as we think we really are. I think that inner part of ourselves is still there. That animalistic part of ourselves is still there.
And as long as you can make those two dots connect in some way, make it seem plausible, then there you go. You've identified this. The frameworks of today are directly translatable to the ancient world. And anybody who has studied the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Zealots and the Essenes is laughing at the notion that these are analogies to what we have going on today. It's pathetic.
I agree with Dan there.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Did you say the Sadducees are like the progressive?
Yes.
Yeah, because of that one facet, the fact that the Sadducees were like, oh well, we'll get along with the Romans. They're gonna appoint the high priest, and we're the party of the priesthood, so we'll go ahead and just, which is wrong on so many levels, including on a scriptural level. The Sadducees were more fundamentalist than the Pharisees were. They were like, oh, you guys like the prophets. Well, and then their woke prophetic critique. Yeah, right. We're going to stick with the original scriptures, the Torah. Yeah, it's so silly.
Well, I mean, and I'm just like, I kept waiting for him to get to the point of what we're supposed to be, because I mean, like, we all know that the Pharisees are like the big adversaries of Jesus, and so it just like, it makes it a little confusing when his whole goal is to promote the conservative thing. That's an ism that he, sorry, but that he kind of definitely makes the Pharisees, you know,
The good guys.
have to be the good guys in a way.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then I'm thinking like, but is he gonna, like, the first time I read it, I was seriously thinking, is he gonna end up being a Samaritan? Like, is that gonna be what he wants? Is to support
maybe, right?
Like, I just didn't know where he was going, because he ran out of options. And so it's basically like, and I think that's actually kind of the point, because that's like, there's no.
You think you'd want to be a Christian, considering that we're Christians?
Nobody that's any good. And that's kind of his whole thing throughout the whole book and the whole series, is that even all the other Christians suck. And so you just like, we're not supposed to be thinking in terms of this world at all. And so, but I also want everybody just to say who they identify with in the group. What would you be? And while we're
basically did this video, there is
asking us, Matt.
And those are splitters. So
was standing up in a window, looking out over the crowd, and saying,
And me, I mean, honestly, like I did learn something through this, that I would have been a Roman. It's
that itself is also, you know.
I mean, that's kind of what I realized. I would have probably been like, I guess I identify with Josephus. Like, they come into town, they're like, what do you
So
want?
traitor.
I'm like, no, dude, I can be on your team. Whatever
I can
you
help
want.
you.
I'll
I can help you.
I'll write your story. I know the language. I can blend in. Hey, take me with you.
Something tells me
That's not necessarily a good thing either, but yeah.
I see purple in your future.
Minute retelling of David and Goliath.
You mean when they like fall asleep in church, and they fall asleep in church and they have their dreams?
It might have been that one when Nelson Mutz is like, lead me, like, yeah. Now that we have the roadmap.
Essenes, Sadducees, Pharisees. We're going to look at all four. We'll start with the Essenes. The Essenes were those who came to the conclusion, they looked at the government, they looked at the culture, and they came to the decision, it's gone. It's gone. We can't save this culture, we can't fix this government, we need to leave. So tell me if this doesn't sound familiar. They bought large acres of land, they moved out in the middle of nowhere, they put up solar panels, they got Starlink from Elon Musk, their love language was ammo, they grew their own food, they homeschooled their kids, and they waited for the rapture. Okay, those were the ancient Essenes. And so the whole goal was just, it's collapsing, get your family out before it's too late. Now, the Essenes are not a group that is mentioned. They're not one of the four parties mentioned in the New Testament, and here's why. They were a secret closed group. If you wanted to join the Essenes, you had to get to know someone, which was very hard. You had to be welcomed in, and you had a 2-year process of being investigated and instructed, and the first rule you had to agree to was, you're never going to say anything about the Essenes. So people will be like, what do they believe? We don't know, because they were really good at keeping their oath. These are like secret societies or private communities. In addition, they became very popular just before Jesus. In 175 BC, there was something called the Maccabean Revolt. And here's what was happening in that day. There were Jewish believers, they studied the ancient scriptures.
Wow, he's going to try to explain the Apocrypha, the Deuterocanonical books. Okay. As a Catholic, let's do this.
They were awaiting the coming of Jesus, and then there was this absolute infiltration of what was called Hellenism. Hellenism is Greek philosophy, Greek perverted sexuality, Greek culture, all coming to every sphere of society to just impose a demonic, evil, and Greek ideology on everyone and everything. Today,
Interesting take. Okay.
the equivalent would be Marxism, that shares actually some of the same core convictions and sexual perversions as ancient Hellenism. And so what happened then is that the true believers that were being pushed on by Hellenism, they pushed back. No, we believe in God. We believe in men and women. We believe that marriage is for a man and a woman. We believe that we should educate our children. We believe that we should worship our God. So that the government cracked down on them and started punishing them. So that caused many of the believers to flee and scatter and to go underground. In many nations, let's say some in the Middle East that are more Islamic or China.
So this is the type of misinformation that leads to really bad fiction, where you have witchcraft and orgies all around ancient Rome, which was super conservative. Rome was a super conservative country, super conservative empire. Expansionist, yes. Imperialistic, sure, but conservative in their culture. Hellenism was extremely conservative. So this doesn't make any sense. You got Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. Yeah, you have Diogenes, but you have Pythagoras. Like what is this guy talking about? You got the Stoics. You have Marcus Aurelius. You have Epictetus. Like what?
There's a big movement of underground persecuted Christians. It was like that leading up to the days of the coming of Jesus. Nonetheless, these were people who decided, it's just gone, get out before it's too late.
Is he calling the Essenes pre-Christians? Instead of the traditional pre-Christians, who should be the Greek philosophers?
How many of you say it feels a little like that? Some of you are like, I may feel that way on November 6th. Nonetheless, here are some of their heroes in the Bible. They would have looked at Noah.
Maybe just
so the whole world
pause
is collapsing. Noah builds an ark.
So,
the first rule of the Essenes is you don't talk about the Essenes.
and yet they were, very popular.
But they were waiting for Jesus. That was the best part. They were just sitting there waiting for Jesus.
Well, and living within communalism as well. So
yeah. So
and also, but if I may, real quick, the notion that the Qumran community exhausts the category of Essenes is entirely inaccurate. That's just one separatist iteration of the Essenes. As far as we know, there were Essenes living within the larger communities as well. It was not all just hippies who went out to live in the woods. It was folks who were spread around Jerusalem and elsewhere as well. So that right there, this is drawing a false conclusion based just.
I know that my thing's showing only one, but usually that means there's like 5 or 6 people in the room. I know this has not been the most exciting show. That's mostly my fault. I'm a low energy today. But for those who are watching, do you want to go on another 10 minutes, or do you want me to start closing out the show so we can end exactly at 2 hours? Let me know. I'm enjoying listening to them, so I'm willing to go another 10 minutes, but it's up to you all. Let me know what you want to do. We can start closing out, or we can keep listening.
A limited.
Keep watching along.
Yeah, I think that's pretty key, Dan. We actually, so for those in the audience who are not aware, the Essenes are generally represented in contemporary scholarship as the same people who wrote and collected the Dead Sea Scrolls, or more appropriately, the people who wrote and collected the Dead Sea Scrolls identified with the Essenes, which were actually quite a much larger movement, and they were all over the place. Josephus says that they were, was it the second or the third most popular of the groups, the heresies, the parties in Judaism at the time. So, but and we have this tendency to kind of retroactively read back into the Essenes on the basis of some of the things that Josephus says, that Philo says, which may not necessarily be clear or accurate in terms of who these people actually were, what they actually thought or believed, and how they actually behaved. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief Kip, for the lesson. That was good.
Was that okay?
Yeah. Thanks. All right. We're just all sitting here listening to you. I just thought somebody should just thank me.
Okay. 2 things. One, are those skateboards or are those snowboards? And if they are, I think they're snowboards. This is a reaction, a pushback against my claim that I am the better skater of the two of us. And considering I've never gone snowboarding, Dr. Kip Davis, you're welcome to invite me to come snowboarding, and I would gladly fall on my ass multiple times to have fun snowboarding with you. And we can sucker my wife into going. Maybe.
We also have a super sticker from Steve Williams. Thank you for the $10 super sticker.
Thanks, Steve.
And we have some super chats, but I'll bring them up a bit later.
And so some wonder, was John the Baptizer, was he in a scene? Because he lived this sort of isolated life until he came into town and had fights with the government, and eventually they beheaded him. And so what happened with the Essenes, they were very big on the Holy Spirit. So they like prophecy, and they had prophecies about political leaders. They spoke in tongues. They talked about angels and demons and the end times, and they loved to worship God. But because they were rural, they were also very conservative.
Stop
They didn't interact.
Pause, stop.
Yeah.
The spirit is coming upon me.
Dan, you're muted.
Sorry, excuse me. I forgot to unmute after talking with my daughter. But I was going to let Matt go.
I just was about to start speaking in tongues, man. It was about to start flowing. No, so I just want to make sure everyone out there knows that not everyone gets the opportunity to go to Israel and to the West Bank, to Qumran, and see the lovely introductory film that they have at the museum, at the visitor center at Qumran. But if you do happen to get the chance, you'll understand Mark Driscoll's playfulness with the figure of John the Baptist is actually there. Like they do something out of this, and maybe even John the Baptist was here, and they really lay it on thick. And it's this is a big thing in I think in the apologetic or Christian appropriation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is that they do this thing where John the Baptizer was probably an Essene and probably hung out with these guys that left the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I think that's just a fun thing. That's not really good history, but that's all right.
Not even close.
And the reference to Hellenism, and now we're talking about angels and demons and stuff like that. It's like, hey, angels and demons were very much a product of Hellenism. So if you're going to talk about how these people are into angels and demons and even apocalypticism and all this is an outcome of the entanglement of Judaism and Greco-Roman philosophy and society. And the funny thing is, if you want to talk about Pharisees who become,
well, I mean, I've always read in my commentaries that it's actually not that I'm discounting the Hellenistic influence here, but that it's actually comes out of their escape from Babylon from the Xanthurianism influence.
Rabbinic Judaism, like one of the main reasons that Christianity and Judaism today are so disparate is because the Pharisees were like, we don't like the Greek philosophy stuff. We're going to go back to the Hebrew Bible and we're going to try to stick with that. And that was the goal. And obviously they weren't perfect at that. But Christianity is the group of Jewish people who were like, no, we like the Greek philosophy stuff. We're going to stick with it. And then just decided to take over.
That's a very good point. Mark Driscoll seems to be misunderstanding a lot here about the actual chronology, but most Protestants have a problem with chronology anyway. So,
Greco-Roman world, and so when you want to talk about the demonic nature of Hellenism, it's like Christianity is what Hellenistic Judaism became. Yeah. When the rest of Judaism went, we're not big on Hellenism. We're going to try to go back to the Hebrew Bible. So the lack of critical thinking, the lack of scholarly insight, understanding, and even concern for the data is just baffling here. This is laughably bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great, like considering that Christianity literally does away with like the ritual law in order to include wider Hellenism, not to protect the.
I'm not sleepy, Thomas. I'm actually going to work out. I'm going to try to finish watching Dune Prophecy. I have no idea why I'm so low energy. I drank the stupid drink. I had a good dinner with a coworker. The only thing I can think of is that I had some ice cream and maybe my sugar's a little too high, so I might be like drowsy. I don't know, because I'm wide awake. I feel good. I got good news today. I need to buy the plane ticket to go to China. I need to start making arrangements for for my dad and for the cats and everything else. I should be super energetic, and I'm just like, I'm super chilled. You'd think I smoked a doobie or something beforehand. So or hit a vape beforehand. So I don't know. I don't know why. I was going to actually start this episode by doing some corrections, some amendments to yesterday's broadcast. Maybe I should have done that, and that would have been more like. I think my cheesy jokes with the pagan scholars, I think, kind of like killed my mood. If that makes any sense. Hi. This is like a chill stream. We should have just been listening to NeFX and just listening to their music. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and call it I'm going to call it a night here. Hopefully we can come back to this tomorrow and continue with this exact video. Hopefully I remember to do so, because I do want to give this video full attention. I thought it was a great video. I thought it had a lot. I even today, even though I've been kind of like, mellow, I think the commentary that I've had has actually been really relevant. So let's do this tomorrow when I have a little bit more energy. We'll do this exact video. We're not going to start over again. We'll start off from here, or at least from the 35-minute mark. And I'll talk to you all later. Let's listen to some music. Let's go to the outro. Hold on. Let's go to the big screen. All right. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, BS. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, anyone who is watching in incognito mode. I know we got a few more viewers earlier. I know this is not as big of a stream as yesterday's was. I hope everyone enjoyed that one. And thank you all, and have a great night. Peace. Here comes the music. What do you guys think? I shaved. Should I be shaved for the rest of the videos, or should I go back to goatee? Goatee? No goatee? Beard? Shaved? What do you guys think? All right. Talk to you all later. Bye.
Foot up on the pedal, pushing hard to the metal. Make a deal with the devil. Channel rage through my vessel into something that is special. Energy of a rebel, going up a level. I just wanna be greatness. I could feel changes, turn a new page and tie up my laces. I will be the bravest, break out of my cages. I will not be nameless, I will not be aimless. Am I gonna chase it? Am I gonna start, or will I keep waiting? Time is limited, quickly fading. It's my time to take it.